Thank you very much for coming to this session. I'm going to present another initiative. I think the previous presentation was really good. I'm going to present another development that we can do from ChinaIndex, from Doublethink Lab ChinaIndex, especially in the context of Indonesia. We have developed something called China-Indonesia Provincial Index, which aims to measure Chinese influence across Indonesian provinces. You can download our report here. I think I can give you 10 to 15 seconds. This is the report that we have. So basically, the context is, of course, our institution is the regional partner for ChinaIndex, and when we do this, we believe that most of the indicators can be applied to understand Chinese influence in the provinces as well. And another context is that over the years, what happened in Indonesia is that China has come to Indonesia not only through Jakarta but also directly to Indonesian provinces. And this has been done through a number of ways, and there are so many complexity whereby a lot of Chinese investments are not known by the government in Jakarta, so only local government know because the relationship was direct. And of course, for China, there are many benefits in engaging directly with Indonesian provinces. Of course, the first one is economic footprint. The second one is diverse opportunities. And the third one is the most important one, which is streamlined interaction. So rather than going through a lot of bureaucracy and difficulties through Jakarta or through the capital, China has bypassed the central government and interacting directly with Indonesian provinces. And for your information, most of the Indonesian provinces' local government have no idea on how to deal with China or foreign policy for that matter. We recently did a survey, for example, among local government. The question that we asked is, what is the Belt and Road Initiative? And the result, 70% have no idea on what BRI is. So I think China used this opportunity to directly interacting with Indonesian provinces to facilitate smoother interaction and partnership with local government. And of course, China used this method as a way of hedging to engage. By engaging with provinces, China can hedge and influence and increase its influence within Indonesia and navigate local political dynamic effectively. And another important way how we came up with this idea is that one of the initiatives that we do in our institution is providing technical assistance to local government, especially in provinces where nickel are concentrated. For your information, China is the major investor in the nickel industry, and the local government have no idea on for example, dealing with the environmental impact or the worker conflict between the local and Chinese workers, that is, they have no idea. And as I mentioned earlier, they don't even know the context on why China is here. So we have had several workshops for local politicians and local government, and the result is that it is true that China has been coming to Indonesia directly to them without any coordination with the central government. And based on this context, that's why we realized that we can use the indicators from ChinaIndex to understand Chinese presence across Indonesian provinces. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, ChinaIndex has nine domains, but for this provincial index, we only use 8. We remove the military indicators because when it comes to military, in the Indonesian context, they are all done at the national level rather than at the local level. We keep the foreign policy indicators because there are questions related to AIDS, and China has also given a lot of aids to Indonesian provinces directly. So here are the results that we get. So this is our first index, and we plan to update it annually. And for this first index, we use the data from the last 5 years. And this is what we get. And you can see here, Chinese presence are mostly concentrated on Java Island. That is where the capital is, and most of the development are taking place within the Java Island. And it is followed by North Kalimantan. I'm not sure if you're aware, Indonesia is planning to move its capital city from Jakarta to North Kalimantan, and China has been one of the most significant investor, and it's followed by Sulawesi. Sulawesi is the island that looks like the letter K. And why China is significant there? Because it has the biggest nickel resources in Indonesia, if not the world. So as you can see here, and for every, and this is the rank, so we use the same calculation as the ChinaIndex. So as you can see here, of course, I'm sure that all of this findings are not that relevant to you, but basically the aim of this presentation is to tell you that, yeah, we can, the first thing that we want to tell is that, yes, China is going directly to provinces, maybe in different countries as well. The second thing is that, yeah, we can use ChinaIndex, we can develop ChinaIndex to a more micro level. And we also have the ranking for each domain, like academia, and we found that most of these indicators, university partnership, Confucius Institute, language education, think tanks, financial support, and academic freedom are very relevant to understand Chinese presence in Indonesian provinces. So we found that many universities at the local level have also partnered with China. Confucius Institute have been established in several provinces, and so on and so forth. And these are the top 5. And very interesting because I think China studies well with Indonesia. So for example, the first one is Yogyakarta. Yogyakarta is a city known to be a student city. And that's why for the academic sector, China has been targeting Yogyakarta as the major destination for its academic influence. And these are some of the examples. In the report, we provided several cases to showcase. So number one, for example, ASEAN Study Center at one of the top universities is belong to the network of ASEAN China think tanks. And in several other provinces, universities have also collaborated with Chinese universities as well. And then local politics is, I think, the most interesting one because we found that these indicators are very relevant. There have been agreement on sister city cooperation, provincial cooperation, and then funding as well. So trips are not only given, funding trips are not only given to politicians at the central level, but also at the local level. And we did some interviews that many of these politicians, they went to China funded by Chinese embassy or the Chinese government without the acknowledgement of the central government. So it's really, really direct. And then we found also political party interaction, campaign finance. So next week we have a local election, and we found that in several provinces where nickel are concentrated, they receive funding directly from the Chinese companies. And most of these companies are state-owned companies. So, and then we found several politicians, local politicians echoing Chinese narrative, mainly on the Xinjiang issue as well as on development issue. One of the politicians from the deep down Papua. Papua is one of the most underdeveloped regions in Indonesia. Suddenly came up on newspaper saying that in order for Indonesia to develop, we have to follow Mao Zedong. So it's very interesting. And these are the rankings. And Central Java is the highest, and this province has the highest, one of the highest Chinese Indonesian or Chinese diaspora. And these are some of the examples. The second one, as I mentioned earlier, the candidate for mayor of Papua wrote an opinion in one of the newspapers applauding Mao Zedong's purported eradication of corrupt practices through cultural revolution. And economy, of course, is a very important sector because, all of these indicators are also relevant to understand Chinese presence in Indonesian provinces. And very interesting that many of the businesses at the local level are now belong to Chinese alliances like the CITW Chamber of International Commerce and so on and so forth. And we have also seen local government giving more relaxation and special regulation for Chinese investment as well. And these are the ranking. And you see here mostly are in Sulawesi. That's where the nickel is concentrated. And another foreign policy, as I mentioned earlier, for this indicator, this mainly related to its, legislative connection, hostage diplomacy, training programs. These are also relevant. And West Nusa Tenggara is ranked the first because the province received the highest foreign aid from China. And and another indicator is law enforcement, and this is related to security services, training, detention, surveillance system. For these indicators, most of the provinces have issues when it comes to extradition. A lot of Chinese have been extradited, and then the use of surveillance system across Indonesian provinces as well. And these are the rankings. And then another one is media. Very interesting that despite the fact that at the national level, Chinese media influence is growing, but actually at the provincial level, it's not very significant. And of course, there are several journalists, local journalists, that have received funding from China to go to China or to go to Xinjiang, and a number of content sharing agreements between Chinese media and the local media as well, but it's not very significant. However, we see that there have been a lot of pressure on journalists across Indonesian provinces, especially again in a province where Chinese investment are high, and there are many environmental impact of Chinese investment. Many journalists have received money under the table to not report on the environmental impact of Chinese investment. And these are some of the ranking, and these are some of the example. One example, for example, the second one, journalist from one of the newspapers went to Beijing, and after the trip, the journalist was reportedly urged to write an article asserting that international media had spread inaccurate information about China. And then society, another indicator is society, and these are mostly related to Chinese events, labor union, financial support, and a number of association and public sentiment as well. And these are the rankings. And the last one is technology. And when it comes to technology, we use the same indicators: critical technology equipment, biometric surveillance, fiber optic, startups, technological collaboration, we do satellite navigation. All of these are present in Indonesian provinces. And by doing all of this, we then know that the overall presence of China in Indonesia is dominated by economic, followed by society, and then academia, local politics, and the least one is the media. So, yeah, it's very interesting as well because, we also contributed to Freedom House Chinese media influence for Indonesia. It was a long paper, but it turned out that it's not that significant. Thank you, and I open for any remark or question. Yes. Andrew, maybe?
Thank you. That's a really great presentation. I'm interested in the point on hostage diplomacy. What are the reasons for hostage diplomacy? Is it journalists? Is it political activists? Is it business people? I wonder if you can go into a bit more detail on why China is conducting that hostage diplomacy.
Thanks, Andrew. I think when it comes to hostage diplomacy, it's mainly on journalists and activists as well. So over the years, especially in the provinces where nickel are concentrated, many of the activists, especially environmental activists, have been detained by, not detained, but have been somehow captured by the Chinese companies. And many of their offices have received death threats from Chinese company as well. So there have been a lot of that. And also when it comes to journalists, many of the journalists have received threat when they report something that are critical of China. And most of the threat, when it comes to activists, we found that most of them come from Chinese companies, but when it comes to journalists, most of them come from Chinese embassy in Jakarta. So it's very interesting, but that's happening in Indonesia. Hope answers.
Thank you so much. Great job, very detailed. So I was just having these fears. I think this is the first edition.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the kind of challenges we were having also, while we were building this was thinking ahead of the next year, the sustainability of some of those specific indicators. Were you able to go about it? Do you have any concerns that probably in another year, subsequent years, you may not be able to keep having records of each of those things? Do you have those concerns?
Yes, I think the main concern is funding, right? But thankfully, for this first inaugural, we did it on our own funding. But for next year, we have received funding from Taiwan to do this, and hopefully it will continue. And we hope to continue annually as well. When we did this, the biggest challenge that we face is always the capital city, which is Jakarta, because we have to differentiate which activities can be considered as national and which activities can be considered as provincial. So that requires a lot of scrutinizing, a lot of deep research when it comes to Jakarta. And another thing that we will do starting next year is that we will do more of an interviews. I think one of the limitations for this year is that we only did it based on desk research. But for next year, we hope to do more in-depth interviews. And another thing that we will do next year is that if you see in the report is that most of these are quantitative, and next year we will do more qualitative analysis, especially for the top 10 provinces, so that we can have more understanding and more analysis on this. Thank you.
Okay, myself, I also have a question because I was surprised by the general score of the media domain. So how would you interpret that, why this domain is ranked so low comparing with other 7 domains? And do you think there is because there is some low regulation framework or something that is particular to Indonesia and maybe other country can thinking of adopting to it?
Okay. So, number one is that, thank you, Tala, sorry. So, number one is that most of the, for example, the content sharing agreement between China and Indonesia have been done with the national newspaper, like the Jakarta Post, Kompas, and any other newspaper which are considered at the national level. And most of the journalists that have been invited to China are also at the national level. Although we see that there is an increasing effort by Beijing to invite local journalists or to invite, or to partner with local newspapers, but we see the number is still minuscule. I think I think one of the reasons is because China understands that at the local level, the criticism or opinion articles criticizing China is not very much. Not many people understand about foreign policy at the local level. Not many people, even if there are scholars trying to criticize China, mostly they send their articles to the national newspaper. So this, has somehow maybe made China to think like not to invest so much on media cooperation when it comes to at the local level. Yeah. But when it comes to regulation, there are not much regulation. It's still very loose, especially at the national level.
Yes. Okay, I will.
Hello.
Yes.
You mentioned earlier you provide technical assistance, right, to provinces because China can go directly to the provinces. How is that possible? Are there no laws, prohibiting this kind of activities without having to go directly through the central agencies, for example? And then the other thing I wanted to ask about, are there policy recommendations coming out of this study that you've done?
Okay. Thank you, Tess. When it comes to the technical assistance, so far our organization has given to two provinces or two regions. Number one is Morowali and number two is Konawe. Morowali is they have two major industrial park built by China, and it has the most number of Chinese workers present. I traveled there once, and on the plane, it's just full of Chinese workers there. And the second one is in Konawe. So the way how we did it is, number one, we create the program. So the first thing that we do is that we visit them first. We knock the door and we say like, yeah, I heard there have been a lot of Chinese investment. There have been a lot of environmental impact. There have been a lot of worker conflict. What are your grievances? And they say, yeah, it's true. And we believe that the local government, the central government does not care about us. So from that on, we realized that even the local government have the same concern like us. They have the same concern of the environmental impact, of the worker conflict, and more importantly, they do not have any grievance mechanism. So when there are worker conflict, for example, they don't know how to solve it because they don't have any grievance mechanism. So based on this, we create the program, and we also did a survey, like I mentioned earlier, tell us what is your opinion on the BRI. They have no idea about it. So the first thing that we do is workshop. So we create a workshop like this one, where we give them some information when it comes to China, why China is here, and so on and so forth. The second thing that we do is we gather their opinion on what we should do. Another thing is that because we are from the Center of Economic and Law Studies, we have lawyers working with us. Their job is to identify the law. By identifying the law, we can tell the local government what they actually can do. Because many of these local governments have no knowledge on what they can do. They just believe that everything comes from the central government. So after providing the workshop, we then assisting them on creating the local plan. So every year in Indonesia, the local government creating a local plan. So that, it's mostly an economic plan. So what we help them to do is to create some kind of what we call to be diversification plan. So that we tell them that, number one, nickel, for example, is not the only sector that you can focus on, and China is not the only partner that you can partner with. You can partner with South Korea, Japan, and so on and so forth. So, and then until now, we still engage with them. So we have them creating local plans, and then now we aim to create some kind of mechanism for environmental impact and worker conflict. So whenever there are conflict between Chinese and Indonesian workers, or whenever there are environmental impact being reported by local people, they have some kind of mechanism on how to deal with that. And hopefully in the future, which is something that is, I think, very difficult to do, is basically to strengthen the relationship between local government maybe and Chinese companies. For now, Chinese companies in Indonesia are very close, very, very close. They don't want to engage even with the local government. So it's something that is very difficult to do. And now, also what we are trying to do is to create some kind of alliances among local government. So we know that not only in Indonesia, but also Indonesia and Malaysia actually. So in Malaysia, we found with our colleague from Merdeka Center that the same thing happened in Malaysia, where China comes directly to Malaysian provinces, and they have the same grievances. And we say like, yeah, let's make some kind of alliances in the hope that, the central government will be more listening to them. Yeah.
Okay.